Good day, you guys. Welcome to Forward Focus. It is election day number 4. I think it's hilarious. The news stations keep calling it election day. Like, come on, just call it election week. Let's be real here. All right, you guys. So we are still waiting on the final countdown here. It looks like it could be a while before everything actually settles. I know T plus three, 3, 2, 1, right? But the market seems happy. I think it's happy about some sort of a resolution coming up. So what we've been seeing is, pretty strong action over the course of this past week. A good 3 solid days of upside. We were seeing some nice gap moves for those of you that are following the indices. I actually want to start out with that. We were talking about this a little bit in League of Traders yesterday, where what we're looking at here, this is a daily chart on the QQQ. And what you'll notice is that we had a good kind of 2-leg move down here on that daily time frame, and then the breakaway gap right here. So yesterday we saw a runaway gap, and I was even anticipating that we had the potential for an exhaustion gap here today. But instead, the market's taken a little bit of a rest, which leads me to believe that we are going to see more upside as we head into next week, because the strength of this move and then the stall here, where we didn't really get that bigger exhaustion, lends room for this to try to continue as we head into early next week. Now, it might just be a single day, could be running into resistance over here. It might take, 2 days, and then we get the move up. But generally speaking, this will try to continue to push a bit more. And it wouldn't even be out of the norm to see it, continue to creep up as we go through next week. Now, what we also talked about, and I don't remember if it was last week or not, is the way that this is playing out here on the weekly time frame and the monthly time frame. And I don't know if I talked about this in League of Traders or if we talked about it last week in Forward Focus, but with the slow move up here, secondary move up, and then we got a third move up, and the way this is forming a kneecap here, a lot of parabolic type of market moves can even go and put in measured moves like this. I don't know that we'll actually see that, but wouldn't that be crazy if we did? It is in the realm of possibilities now just because of the pattern that is here. So we're at a very key do or die point here. For that to happen, we would need to see it going here, like this month, basically. So we would need to see that continuation start immediately, but that would be really, really interesting. It does look like a kneecap exactly. I mean, one thing to keep in mind, you guys, when we're looking at what the election results are that are coming in, e- even though it looks like it's probably going to Biden, what we see with the House and the Senate is that there's no like clear majority for one side to really fully like direct things. So it's not like you're going to have like a ton of changes that will be happening really quickly like that. So especially with the Senate right now, they're not going to want to back down on a lot of what's going on. It's been a while since we've had um, a new president come in that didn't control both the House and the Senate. So with that, I think that, there could be some additional confidence for market players. I'm just like hypothesizing here, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. So that's what we're looking at right now. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that people are just like relieved to have this kind of coming to conclusion, but at the same time, it's not really conclusive, you know? There's not going to be any like dramatic change here as we go forward. So, from a market perspective, from like a technical analysis perspective, there's this possibility, which is really kind of crazy given, how fast the market's gone up. This reminds me a lot of what was happening back in 2000. It's like 20 years ago. And so if that happens, I mean, it, it could last, another 6 months or something like that. And then we would see the widening up period again trying to happen up there. Now, again, it would have to go with the kneecap really quickly because if this even went out as far as over here, you guys, then breakout moves would tend to be more of a trap. So it would have to happen really soon for that pattern to form. It would need to hold it as a kneecap, essentially. Let's go look at the other markets here. When do I think we'll have results completely in? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine at this point, you guys. I don't know. Do I think that when they are tallied, it will make a difference in the market? Not, not really. I mean, that might be when we see things kind of stall out, but no, I don't think so. Let's start an election results pool. I think you're confusing us with gamblers, Rue. No. Oh. They do that, right? They have betting pools on things like elections. Do you remember? I don't know if you guys remember this, but back when, oh my gosh, this was probably like about 20 years ago. They actually had like things that were tracking like the elections. That's like you could trade like stocks. Do you guys remember this? I don't know if they still do that or not. I'm, but I remember it was like a big thing like 20 years ago or something. It was interesting. Was it Bush? I think like Bush presidency was one of them. I don't remember, you guys. But yeah, Karen remembers. What was it? So Harvey, like back like 20 years ago or so when they had the elections and stuff, they would have like these like quasi securities that would trade like stocks that would be like predicting like election results. Yeah, they might have ran into like some trouble with regulators on those. I don't remember. But yeah, it was a type of betting. Haven't heard anything like that in the last, at least the last 3 elections though, so I don't know. Those who are curious, go look that up. All right, you guys. So with the Russell here, we're also looking at something that, it really kind of go either way, I mean, if we look at this two-wave move up here, we're in the middle of what we call a ballet foot. So you've got your two waves up here. That was a little crazy drawing. And then you've got your ballet foot here. So this is your leg. This is your kneecap. Again, that's what we would be wanting to see on the weekly charts of the NASDAQ. And then you've got your ballet foot here. So sometimes this can be tilted and offer a continuation. And the way we've got kind of these shallower corrections in here, that remains a possibility on this Russell as well, actually. So what I would expect on that is that on the weekly, if that were to happen, it could go to this really steep 2T. So steep 2T has basically kind of a shallower pullback, and then it has a steeper two-way move up, and then it flips. And so that is what we're looking at. Oh, Oscar actually came up with a link for us. Here, I'll post that link for you guys. Whoops, I'm typing in the wrong computer here. There you go. You can see it. Predictit.org. So is it still going on, Oscar? I think so. Lincoln, if you can send me last night's recording, that's awesome. I'll get that up here for you guys, for folks. If you guys are not coming to those Thursday night study groups, oh my gosh, you definitely need to. It's a great way to see all of the strategies, put into different words. So yeah, I mean, the Russell here looks like it definitely has room too. The S&P, the Dow all do. The Dow's been a really good one for following lately for you guys. That kind of like smooth things out a little bit. A little bit more so than the NASDAQ. Of course, you've only got a small basket of stocks there, so that helps it out. So in terms of really great volatility, that can be something you can use, not necessarily if you want to trade it, but you can use it as like a confirmation tool. So like if you see a setup on the NASDAQ, for example, check out what's going on in the Dow, and that can give you a good confirmation that, hey, you're right, or hey, maybe you should pause and think about it a little bit more. But yeah, I do feel that overall we've got room for more upside. The way that momentum is picked up this last week compared to the entire downside into the beginning of November, and then the rounded lows at the lows intraday on like 120-minute, 240-minute chart. Those are really good to help get this going too. And our indices have already passed the 76.4% retracements of the last drops over here. So that also helps make it more likely that we could see these pushes continue. In fact, what's interesting is if you look at like a 2-minute chart of the NASDAQ right now, it almost looks exactly like what is happening on the Russell here. Let me show you this. This is kind of cool. Got a 30-second up. That'll do it. Look at that, you guys. The bottom chart is your 30-second of the NASDAQ right now. Your top chart is your Russell daily chart. Look at how similar those are. From the really strong move up, following the even steeper move down, and then as it gets into the 76.4% retracement zone, it's kind of chopping around. So you could even watch how this ends up playing out this afternoon to use it as a little bit of a guide for potential on what can happen here on our Russell. So for example, this right here is what we're looking at. This is kind of we've got our megaphones are kind of backwards here. You've got the symmetrical triangle and then the megaphone, and then you've got your little triangle here. But overall, really, really similar. So these are the things that strike me when I'm studying charts as I look for similar actions, different time frames, different markets, and just kind of collect data on how those play out. And that's what gives me an idea of, hey, this is what could happen. Obviously, just one example isn't enough to draw a conclusion, but if you continue to see the same thing over and over and over again, then you certainly can start to. So let me just kind of put these two charts next to each other here. You guys can follow how that NASDAQ plays out. See what happens. And it can be little changes in difference in momentum that can impact how one plays out compared to the other. So I'll just grab this here as a screenshot and post it into Telegram for you. Right now we've got a little bit of a megaphone trying to form in the NASDAQ down there. So what are some of the markets you guys would like to look at today? Any particular stocks, anything like that? Jeff says the ES just hit 76.4% retracement of last down move about 20 minutes ago to the tick. On the 1500 tick chart, we see that. Let me show you. Let's see, I think I changed the ES. I put it on here. But yeah, the ES kind of did the same thing. If you look at like a 1500 tick chart, you'll see it. And then let me put some of these other charts up that you guys are asking about on some of the other ones quick so they start loading for us. Apple and yeah, the difference that you're right, there's a little bit of difference here. So this is kind of slowing a little bit, whereas this is more flat here. So you got a one-wave correction, two-wave correction. That does help the bulls a little bit more on the Russell compared to what was going on the 2-minute of the NASDAQ. That's a little bit of difference there. And then is PLTR out of the woods? You can see that retracement here on this one too. Is right at the 76.4. I think this is still the Qs maybe. Just waiting on the ES to load. And then we'll look at NIO. Anything else you guys want to look at? Go ahead and post them here. The one difference between the Russell and the NQ as well, you guys, is that look at how this Russell came up to the 76.4% immediately, whereas the NQ did stall at like 61.8%. So fully coming up to test the 76.4 is actually stronger than if it starts to stall and shift momentum at 61.8% retracement. So here, for example, you can see that this didn't make it like straight up into 76.4. Let me put those fibs on there for you. See that? Tested it to the spot. But if it had had a steady move up into 76.4, then there's a better chance that, you know, two-wave corrections would go and have a much stronger outlook. And that's what we see happening on the Russell. The Russell did go straight into 76.4. So PLTR, that was an absolutely beautiful shallow phoenix, you guys, yesterday. Look at that. Exact 1-to-1 ratio for correction. And then the breakaway gap. That is a beautiful setup for a shallow Phoenix textbook, in fact. Nice continuation, and now we're at a bit of a widening up zone. Outlook on this is kind of a little harder to say, where is this going to go? There's no back data on what is considered like a good previous impulse move or anything like this. As far as this looks for an IPO, it does look like something that can keep going and continue to have strength, but we need to see how it handles this widening up zone up here. So at this point, I wouldn't, do anything with it, except maybe play some intraday moves. You can see a nice little check mark in here with continuation to give another strong move here today. That's exactly what you do want to trade. For those of you that do trade IPOs, that's a beautiful, beautiful setup there. And then you can see this whole larger thing also creates these check marks. So when you see this pattern happening, that is one that I will definitely be happy buying. But as far as, new positions up here, that's going to be a lot more tricky. Look at the wave count. 1, 2, 3, a little bit of a smaller base, and then 4. So that usually will indicate a trend exhaustion move. So when you have 1, 2, 3 legs up, and then one that is only about twice as long as each of these two, even though this is a really strong move, and then it tries to go again, that's usually going to end the trend and you'll get channel breaks. So this is a really good technical example of that as well. So this two-way pullback here is actually very highly predictable with the way this has played out. You're going to see that over and over and over again. But then this could go into a trading range for a while again. That was another beautiful check mark breakout here. Look at that, you guys. Same thing going on there. Daily looks good, weekly. So you still got more room on these. Inverse head and shoulders, slower move. And now the break is trying to gain some momentum after it kind of had a little bit of a slow start there just because it was so large. So the size of this meant that as that opened, it was pretty close to, measured impulse moves. But overall, it looks okay. I mean, this was potentially an early breakout, especially if it hadn't been as large of a move. It could have pulled back and done like twice as long, just treated this like a 2F correction like that. But it didn't. It kept and regains the strength within the same day. So that should continue here. On the daily is just you're going to have to watch these impulse moves. So the ones you want to compare are going to be like this, these, this, and then just really watch as it's coming into those levels, how the momentum shifts. Again, not something I would look for new setups here, but if you're in it, I wouldn't be too concerned yet. Yeah, you've got some intraday exhaustion, but it's so strong on the upside. Unless you get, even if you get like a shallow avalanche forming, like let's just say that goes into a shallow avalanche, something like that. Yeah, that can have a sharp drop back into this zone, but it could still hold up on the daily time frame. But that would be something that could lead to stronger downside intraday, because if you look at this portion here, it goes up and then has these three highs. So that is what's creating a little bit of a stronger pullback right now at this moment. Right there. So that it can gain intraday. So just depends upon what you're looking at for like a longer term objective. TWLO. Here's our Apple. Oops, it's doing the wonkiness again. So Apple again is just, it's in a widening up zone here. You can see it's trying to do a break. Kind of bothers me on this type of thing is that sometimes you get these false breaks and then it will just go out a little longer. It might do like a little flush. Try to go again. I don't know. I mean, overall, I would focus on upside, but just really pay attention to things like, you know, two-wave measured moves, things like that, in case it treats this like a one-wave correction and then tries to go for like something else, like another correction. Little baby avalanche just triggered on the NASDAQ, by the way. What kind of larger time frames are really messy right now on the intraday charts. LUV. TWLO. So see this here. This is where this hit a widening up zone, but it did kind of like what we just saw in Uber on intraday charts, where it had the 1, the 2 that was a little slower, and then the 3 here. So this could, you know, go into more of a range here. Maybe even do like a little 2T or something there and go into a little bit more of a range. It's going to be harder to just sustain like a massive continuation though at this point. So maybe something like if it goes for like a 2T, then it'll pull back again. Could do it with like a slower pullback. It doesn't have to be fast. This is kind of gradual here. But this is going to be mostly range bound at this moment. It pulled up more than 50% of this drop, which means that this support zone is a stronger support zone. So even if it comes back down into here, you would usually expect some sort of reaction off of this level. What could happen is that if it doesn't like bounce there, it could just start to go in like tons of overlap like that. So not really anything like for any new setup or such right here. You can see it's underperforming the overall market just a little bit. Got that rounding off going on up here on the 15-minute. I would consider this to be like one wave of a correction right now. So you definitely have room for another wave of downside on like the 120-minute. Let's see, which ones did I miss, you guys? FERR. If I haven't looked at yours yet, just go ahead and repost it for me. Got love is still trying to do that check mark. You notice that it retraced, you know, less than like 76.4 with a steady move. So kind of still potential to creep on up, but needs like another low ideally here to create a little bit of a better check mark for it. And then of course, all of this over here is going to be strong resistance to watch for. So I think it's a little early, a little bit longer on that daily and weekly time frame, a little bit more pullback. If it wants to try to do like a breakout, I'd like to see something like that. This little shift here is a con. for the bulls. Right here. So what you would want to see is something that kind of shifts it out more like this. So maybe in like early December, that would be better timing. NIO. And FVRR. So here's a nice, that was a nice little two-wave. We're definitely at an exhaustion level on the 15-minute. So this is showing you another example of something that's gone parabolic, you guys, kind of like what we've seen on the weekly timeframes. Overall market, you got your 3 legs up here. It's not as slow of an increase as we saw on the NASDAQ, but this just shows you, how this is another option for instead of going into like a kneecap and doing like a bigger 1, 2, 3, this pulled back more than a third of that last leg up. So it makes continuations harder on the upside. That immediate third pullback allowed it to have a second pullback in there. And this can more easily cause traps over previous highs. So the daily time frame, I would consider this to be exhausted here on the daily right now. You're going to be into like a widening up zone here. There's no rounding. So as far as like correction goes, I don't anticipate any massive major pullback. It could even, pull back and kind of go and shift like this. So we could still get a higher high, but just do it where the momentum starts to shift because you've got your slower move, really fast move. So the odds are there's going to be a third move, but your correction is probably going to last about the same. So I give it another early into next week. And of course, this is not like a straight shot up on the 15-minute, so there is always room you could get that additional straight shot up for the third move, but watch how it tries to bounce off of that zone. That would indicate whether your channel is going to be able to hold with strong momentum or not. I think the size of the daily move is going to be harder to sustain it, but it can still creep up because the daily move was so steep on the upside. All right, you gang. Anything else you wanted me to see other than the NIO? Here's the NIO. Been watching. Again, look at that, from like a standpoint of what we were talking about with is it PLTR? So like this is the same type of thing that could happen with that other IPO because you've got your round and then you've got your low level shallow Phoenix and then the strong move up. And yeah, hey, this doesn't look like much now compared to what it is here. But if we went and we got rid of maybe, come on, let me squish my chart more. If we got rid of some of those other days over there, you would say, oh my gosh, this looks like so extended here when it's hitting 16. And then it goes to 44. So you could use this NIO as something as kind of like a guide to the potential for PLTR. Let me put that PLTR again up there too, so you guys could see that. And remember that comparison there. So this is, a little bit of a more squished version of what was happening over here. But here's the air equivalent for like your downside move, your upside, then you got your shallow phoenix. You got your move up to here, and then hit there to there. So you guys could see where that possibility is, right? But you got these little corrections in the middle, and that's what I would use. That's what I would watch for. Snap, TSA, Tesla. Snap like NIO. We'll see here hopefully in a second. I mean, you guys, you got kind of a lot of like the same idea going on here. We've got the kind of the shallower pullback, the shallower move up, and then you got, in this case, it was a mega phoenix, which is shallow, and then you've got your momentum gaining. So it's not something that I would be surprised if we still see it going. But again, where it was a week or two ago, that was the exhaustion that we were looking for. So you got the exhaustion, but then now you're getting like potential for continuation moves. Might be a little bit early on that weekly though. So it might still kind of play around here a little bit more. Like again, if you compare it to what we saw on that NIO, this is more of like an intraday setup really than a daily setup here. Not as good of a swing trade setup right now. Because you've got with like this two-way move up here, this could still create like a steep 2T intraday. That would be like the biggest risk factor. And then maybe it pulls back again before it tries to go. It doesn't have to, but that's the risk that you've got going on. Tesla, I mean, this is something where we could get another pop, but then pull back into the range. I'm not a fan of symmetrical triangles that are really tight triangles. Because when that happens, it's harder to get really solid breakouts. This is what we saw over here, remember? It just tried and then failed, and I don't like that. Yeah, there's times where it can go, but it's just not as strong of a setup. So, something that would draw it out a little bit longer to try to give you another daily setup for a swing trade would be better on this one. And then, what was it? NVCR. Look at this NVCR down here at the bottom. We're kind of going with a theme here today, right? There's your slow shift. Here's your shallow Phoenix. And then you got your buys. This is a slower version of the bulls taking over. That's really similar to what we saw on that PLCR, NIO, those setups. When you're watching, Facebook did the same thing as this when it IPO'd, by the way, you guys. Same thing. Almost exactly the same thing. It had that shift down there. It had the Phoenix. And then it just kind of took off after that point. Let me see if I've got. At this point on this end, that NVCR, like this high here, I think you're going to go into a trading range there for a couple weeks. Let me see if Facebook, I can get that daily back far enough to show you. I don't know. The weekly. eBay did the same thing with its IPO. I'm not surprised. It's a really common like IPO type of action. And it's what can tell you that you've got something that can really get going for you. I actually like when it does like that cup with handle type of thing. Gosh, we can't really see it, but yeah, you had the same thing going on. All right, you guys. Well, let's see. Did I cover Amazon? Amazon. We'll take a look at Amazon and then we'll wrap this up here for today. You know, the funniest meme that I saw for the election so far was, my gosh, have you guys seen that movie with the rabbit who's like a police officer and then the sloth working at the DMV? I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, that's what it reminds me. That was hilarious. And the fox, yep. And they have the meme had the sloth counting the votes. It was hilarious. Yeah, so Amazon, you know, again, I don't know up here. I it has that shift, which makes it suspect to being able to pull back further. But with the overall market, it generally try to hold up. But I just don't see like a good pattern on this, you guys. I could see it doing like a 1, 2, 3, but it's not as strong as the overall market. So it's trying to do a little creep up, but it's really struggling. So you got your 3 waves exhaustion here. You got time correction, price correction. Yeah, it can go back up, but then is it going to go into a bit of a range now? Into next Zootopia. Thank you, Karan. That's the name. But yeah, I don't have a good feel on this one, you guys. At this point, I would just basically be kind of standing on the sidelines waiting. My concern is it might do another pullback really quickly even and do like could even go like to 2B or something like that. So no real good feel for me on this one right now. Too many different potential scenarios. All right, you guys. Well, I am going to head on out of here. So you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you back here next week. So goodbye for now.